Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we are on our 20th in-depth character review, where we are looking at the fan favorite Ahsoka Tano. You guys have been asking for a review for months and months and months, and today we are finally going to do it in Jedi Week. So to get started here, let's go ahead and pull up the Hall of Fame and see what we did last time. In our last review, we looked at Princess Leia in memory of Carrie Fisher's recent death, and we placed her in the Master category since she is a fantastic beginner character in the game. But today, where is our sassy Padawan of Anakin Skywalker going to fall? Well, stay tuned and all of your questions of Ahsoka Tano will soon be answered. Before we get going, just another quick shout out to Doriana for providing much of the Jedi gameplay you will be seeing this week. And like we always do it, my friends, let's go ahead and talk about the history of Ahsoka Tano. And she has quite a cool and fun history, as we saw in the Clone Wars. Now, Ahsoka Tano is a fan favorite character, as I mentioned, from the Clone Wars cartoon series, who was born on the planet of Shili. This particular character we are reviewing from Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is the model from the Clone Wars and not from the Rebels series, who was serving as a Padawan for the Jedi Order. Ahsoka Tano was discovered on her homeworld by Plo Koon and was later assigned to be the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. At the start of the Clone Wars, she was also given the status of commander and served by Captain Rex's side many times. She also survived many dangerous encounters against foes such as General Grievous, Asajj Ventress, and even characters like Cad Bane. Towards the end of the Clone Wars series, we see that Ahsoka Tano gives up the path towards the Jedi Order and decides to instead take her own way. And in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we see Ahsoka Tano take on some of her master's behavior by being very daring and taking very risky moves, and we also see the strong relationship between Ahsoka and Anakin Skywalker take place in this game to replicate the cartoon series, because when Ahsoka Tano would be under Anakin Skywalker, she would try and fight her best. And of course, there is so much more to talk about, but let's go ahead and look at how we unlock Ahsoka Tano. And there are a few avenues to unlock her. One is through hard battles, dark side 4C, and the other one being the light side 5D battle. But the most popular way to farm her as quickly as possible, the route that I took to get her to 7 stars, was through Cantina shipments. And she also shows up pretty frequently in the Bronzium packs, kind of like how I'm a Gun Die did in my previous video. But this is stuff you guys already probably knew. Let's get to the stuff that you might not know about, and let's talk about the key stats of Ahsoka Tano before we consider any mods and any abilities. And these stats are definitely nowhere reflective as to what her kit will eventually give her, but we are going to ignore her kit for the time being because a lot of crazy stuff is happening. And the first thing we got to talk about are the pros. What is she exceeding it? And we see quite a couple of very important things, actually. Firstly, in terms of maximum damage, she is number 15. Very good. The average is 5,453, and Ahsoka Tano is definitely above that at 7,359. So a very great maximum basic damage on paper, which puts her in the top 15%. Now, getting on to the close sibling of maximum damage, let's talk about max basic damage, and it's also great to see this in the pros category. In terms of this, she is number 13 in maximum basic damage, with the average being 4,251. Ahsoka Tano is definitely above that by a good 1,200 points, where we see it at 5,449, again, putting her in the top 15%. And two more things here. The next one being armor penetration, which definitely goes hand in hand with the maximum damage that we just talked about. She is number 25 in this category, and the average is actually 53. So definitely above this, where she is at 69. So not as great as the other two, but she's in the top 25%, which is nothing to put down. And of course, we got to talk about health steal. She actually has 30% health steal as her base, which is one of the, it's actually the second highest group of health steal in the game. Asajj Ventress is leading in this category, and Ahsoka Tano and 2 others have this. And this does not even consider the other self-healing abilities she has from her kit, but more on that very soon, I promise you. Alright, let's talk about the average, and this is a very short list actually. She only has one thing that's on average or on par, and that is armor. In terms of armor, she is number 50, and the average armor being 226, Ahsoka Tano is actually ever so slightly above this at 228, putting her in the top 50%. So all that means is that she will try to mitigate as much damage as possible, but she won't be doing it as much as characters like Sun Fac or Old Ben. And oh boy, it's that time, the stuff that Chewbacca needs to cry about, and that is the cons. And the cons are not too pretty, let me tell you. In terms of speed, hold on to your chairs, folks. She is number 94 in speed. The average speed is 127, and Ahsoka Tano is 105, putting her in the bottom 10%. So much for being a young and agile Padawan in the Clone Wars. She is very slow in this game, but of course this does not consider her kit that we will eventually talk about. Health, not as bad as the previous thing, but she is number 62. The average is 19,166, and Ahsoka Tano is at 16,536, so this puts her both below the average and the median for health, because as I mentioned before, the health is a bit skewed towards the right end of the spectrum, but she is still very low on both of those regards. So this puts her in the bottom 50% when we look at the average. And we got one more bumpy roller coaster to go on, so hold on to that handlebar, folks, and that is protection. Number 90 in protection, very low once again, and the average is 19,617, and she is way far from this at 13,487, putting her in the bottom 10%, and her kit does not provide any remedy for her protection. I can tell you that right now, so that's staying as is. But okay, I kind of hinted at this a couple times, but her kit does address some of these problems, so don't worry, let's go ahead and talk about it, because as we see with her kit, it stems back to the whole Clone Wars era where Ahsoka is using very risky moves for a Padawan of her age that have both a high risk and high reward outcome if everything works in her favor. So to start off, let's go ahead and talk about her basic attack, Energetic Slash. It deals physical damage to a target enemy, and Ahsoka recovers health equal to 20% of her max health. It is increased to 30% on a critical hit. So on top of those previous things I mentioned, she is getting even more health regeneration and even more if she gets a critical hit. And it does a decent punch at 5,221, or on the lower end of the spectrum, it's 4,725. So definitely a lot of health regeneration as we see, and we still got more to look at here because the next ability talks about just that. Protective Maneuver. Now this deals physical damage to a target enemy, and if that target she hits had a 50% or more health, then all allies recover health equal to 30% of Ahsoka Tano's max health. Otherwise, this attack deals 50% more damage, and before considering anything, this does 6,659 to 7,359. So with protection being a very big thing, she will most of the time act as a healer for your team, and this is extremely deadly and fun when she is with a General Kenobi lead, since she can attack and heal and then call others to assist off that heal that she gives. So she is a very fun character to use under General Kenobi, and this has the potential to do over 10,000 on a non-critical hit when one is below 50% health. And of course, when you get critical damage going, that's a pretty darn good attack with a low cooldown of 3. Now this next thing, not so much to brag about really. Quick Steps, which is her leader. Pretty much Jedi and Night Sister allies have a plus 14% evasion and gain 20% turn meter whenever they evade. So not a very useful leader both in application, because evasion is not a big thing anymore, but also there are other better evasion characters like Dooku and Old Ben, and they benefit everyone, not just specific factions in the game. And just, yeah, when looking at the end game, you will most likely never see her as the leader, and you're most likely going to be seeing Old Ben and Count Dooku leading the battle if you really do need evasion. But trust me, we don't want to see evasion anymore. Probably one of the more aggravating mechanics in the game, and most people probably would agree with me on that. Lastly, Daring Padawan, and holy cow, so much is going on here, and if you did not look at her numerical stats, this would kind of seem overpowered in a way. Ahsoka Tano has plus 45% health and plus 45 speed and plus 15% critical chance. When critically hit, she loses one of these effects, but when she defeats an enemy, she regains all of them. And this is something new right here. If Jedi Knight Anakin is present, Ahsoka gains critical hit immunity for 2 turns at the start of each encounter, and whenever she uses a special ability. So pretty interesting stuff going on here, mainly because it is attempting to address the very poor stats. For example, very low speed. She's at 105, but then she starts off the battle at 150. 50, which is it's definitely above the average, but nowhere near amazing as we would see with other characters like Rey, TIE fighter pilot, or whatnot. But the problem is this: we pretty much see at least one sort of critical damage dealing character in every squad you face in Arena, and they usually go pretty darn early, like Biggs or the droids. And Ahsoka Tano could potentially lose all of these buffs at the very beginning and never ever get them, and you're almost required to use Anakin Skywalker to make sure that is not the case. So it's very conditional, and it very relies too much on Anakin Skywalker because critical damage is a huge thing right now. But the Anakin synergy is pretty recent, and with him by her side to guide her, she becomes more viable and reliable, that she will be fast and do more damage. So that's good and bad at the same time. Now let's go ahead and talk about one more thing before I get to the subjective part of the review, and that is the gear. In terms of raid gear, we all need raid gear at some point to get to gear 11, and we see that the average raid gear in this game is 3 pieces, and Ahsoka Tano starts needing her first piece at gear 8, and then she needs 3 pieces to get all the way up to that grand status of gear 11. Those 3 pieces she needs are the Mark 5 Fusion Furnace, the Mark 6 Nubian Design Tech, and lastly the Mark 7 Nubian Security Scanner. Now the gold gear, not the greatest story here, but the average amount needed is 200 pieces, and Ahsoka Tano needs 440, and not as bad as someone like Cassian Andor, but she will need 2 Mark 8 biotech implants to get from gear 10 to gear 11, so it won't be that easy of a trudge to get to that next level. And purple gear, the stuff that makes you want to cry to sleep, and we see that the average is 110 pieces, and Ahsoka Tano is below this, not by much, but she needs 965 pieces. And she is actually one of those characters that literally needs a taste of everything. She likes to go to a buffet and have a little bit of everything, but not too much of one piece. So really there is not a single particular piece she needs an extreme amount of. And blue, green, and white gear, she's pretty much average for blue, and she's below average for green and white. So nothing too crazy, but hey, I just want to point that out for you guys. And alright, let's get to the more subjective part of the review, where I just go to town, talk about stuff, Yoda's checklist, her mortal enemies, her best friends, all of that cool stuff. But first, I have to go ahead and summarize my thoughts before we do that. Ahsoka Tano is one of those characters people really want to love in the game. She has a very powerful unique when one simply reads the words on paper, but the 2 things are what prevent people from using her on a constant basis. The boost in speed and the health address very low stats, so at most she becomes at par, or at most sometimes above par, but not amazing. The other reason is that those powerful effects are almost instantly taken away with wigs, Lando, droids just polluting Arena everywhere you go. Yes, you could run Anakin Skywalker, but not everyone prefers to be paired up to characters just to make sure one stays around a decent level. It's kind of like I give you a phone, I tell you it's the most amazing phone out there, but the thing is you cannot use that phone mobily. You always have to be connected 24/7, which kind of defeats having that phone in the first place. So you're kind of held back and chained, and you're kind of limited in mobility and options when forming your Arena squad. But to put that more into perspective in our game, when we look at Wedge and Biggs, they are both great stand-alone characters, but they become even better when paired together, and that is not the case with Ahsoka. Ahsoka goes from below average in a lot of stats to average when paired with Anakin Skywalker. That is not to say she is a horrible character, since she does a lot of decent damage and gets a ton of health regeneration for both herself and her squad, but her options are limited since it just seems like she almost needs Anakin, so you are forced to run the 2 characters just for her. And lastly, her leader ability is probably useless since there are better catch-all evasion leaders if that's your goal, like Count Dooku and Old Ben. So if you are planning on using Ahsoka Tano, let me tell you who her mortal enemies are so you can kind of plan in advance on how to protect her or use her. Like other Jedis, Darth Maul is very powerful. He does a lot of damage against Jedi, and he's actually has a very good Zeta leader. I got destroyed by him the other day. Palpatine, Dooku, Vader all have these anti-Jedi synergy stuff going on. Definitely want to watch out for them. Buff immunity is great if you want to go ahead and get rid of her critical hit immunity that she might have when paired up with Anakin Skywalker. And the big thing right here, wigs, Lando, droids, anyone that does a ton of critical damage like TIE fighter pilot as well, you want to try to avoid them or make sure she does not get hurt from their damage, because then she just becomes a burden for your team and loses all those amazing buffs she gains at the beginning. On the flippity flip of things, what are her best friends? Who does she send cat memes every night before she goes to sleep? And definitely Anakin Skywalker as expected. General Kenobi is also a great one. He can grant critical hit immunity just like Anakin can, but Anakin gives that direct critical hit immunity to her right away versus General Kenobi, you gotta kind of wait until she gets critically hit already. So they work great together. I'm a Gun Die is another one. Getting her to attack a lot will make sure she's doing some decent damage frequently and that she's also gaining a lot of health. She's regenerating her health a lot, so that's also great. And oddly enough, I never thought I'd think about this, but General Grievous might actually be a potentially great leader for her as well, because he can reduce the likelihood someone applies critical damage, and on top of that, he can also reduce that critical damage that one receives. But this probably won't be her most popular best friend. And lastly, not really her best friend, but she can help Night Sisters, even though they're probably one of the worst factions as of now. But she does have synergy with them, so that does technically make her their friend to some extent. Now, mods, a lot of interesting ways you can go about this. One of the more popular ways to go ahead and run your mods is by putting on critical damage and critical chance mods, so she has a higher chance to regenerate more health and she can do more damage to her opponents. And the faster she does more damage, the lower health they get, and once they get below 50% health, then she does even more damage. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, you could take the route of putting on health mods on her, but keep in mind that she already has low health to begin with. But if you are pretty sure she will not lose those buffs, then that actually might be a good opportunity as well for you. Now, primary and secondary mods, I have some interesting ones. The basic ones that you definitely need for almost every character are speed for sure, because she already has low speed to begin with, and you want more speed to just add on top of the speed she's getting from her unique. And you also might want to consider critical damage, critical chance, protection, but here's the one that might be interesting. What about giving her critical hit evasion mods? That's something to consider, because if she can avoid those critical hits, she can be doing more damage, she's faster. So that's actually something I never recommend for a character before except her. We are getting ever so close to the Hall of Fame, and there's only one more thing we have to talk about, and that is the do or do not checklist, where we go ahead, summarize everything in the game and see what she is good at and what she is not good at. Firstly, Arena. I'm very on the edge on what to put her in, but I will put her in Do, because she can be very good at the beginning of the game, and when she's paired up with the right character, she can be pretty deadly. But as a standalone character, she's not that good, so definitely in the middle, but I'm going to say Do. For Galactic War, yeah, you can definitely pass through Galactic War with I'm a Gun Die, Anakin, all those characters. Light side battles, just the same thing. Ahsoka Tano will definitely be of help. Cantina battles, yep, same thing as before. Go ahead and put a Do in there. Mod challenges, yeah, pretty much all the Jedi in the game can be used for the defensive mod challenges. Although not the most useful mods, Ahsoka Tano is definitely a great character, but there are also other Jedi you can use in her place. Now, the Yoda event, something that a lot of people ask all the time. Ahsoka Tano is definitely a great character for the Yoda event. Getting a lot of health for your team and a lot of health for herself and doing great damage to Yoda is something you definitely want to have. Ships, yeah, definitely Do. She has a ship, and it's quite a popular ship. We won't go into detail in this video, but she's also great in there, so both on the land and in the sky. Rancor Raid, definitely Do not. Yeah, she does decent damage, but as we know, the Rancor Raid is a marathon where you have to remove turn meter, and she has absolutely none. Finally, the AAT raid, I will go ahead and say Do. She is not essential by any means, but she can be a helpful person under a leader like I'm a Gun Die or General Kenobi or Anakin Skywalker, and because she gains that extra health bonus because she is a Jedi for the AAT raid. But that's all we got to talk about. Let's go ahead, pull up the Hall of Fame, and see where we are placing this Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Will she get a promotion? Well, a few more seconds, we will find out. And from Grandmaster to Youngling, Ahsoka Tano will be crowned as a Knight. So she is getting a slight promotion than what she had in the Clone Wars, but the heavy reliance on Anakin Skywalker to stay above average is holding her back greatly, and her stats should already be what her unique is attempting to grant her. As you see in Master and Grandmaster, those are great standalone characters, and Ahsoka Tano is not a great standalone character, and she relies on too much, unlike those guys in those top two categories. But there you have it, folks. That's our whole review for today. I hope you enjoyed this Ahsoka Tano review. Please, if you guys have time, drop me a comment down below on what you want to see next for our last Jedi in-depth review for the week. Also, leave me a like if you're enjoying these videos, and stay subscribed if you want to get more of this great content. And as always, folks, we will talk again soon. Peace out.